the night the walls breathed. If you think breaking out of a maximum security prison is impossible, think again. Smash that like button, subscribe, and brace yourself, because this isn't fiction. It's one of the most chilling, unsolved escapes in modern history. It was 3:17 a.m. at Graybridge Correctional Facility, a concrete fortress known for housing the country's most dangerous criminals. Guard towers overlooked every inch of the perimeter. Motion sensors lined the fences, and cameras blinked like unblinking eyes. For 20 years, no one had ever escaped. Until that night, inmate 489, real name Elias Shaw, had been locked in solitary confinement for nearly a year. Convicted of high-level fraud, multiple identities, and federal document forgery, Shaw wasn't a violent man. He was a strategist, a man who could read systems the way others read faces. Guards called him the Ghost. They said he never raised his voice, never argued, and never asked for anything. But somehow everyone knew he was always thinking. When the morning shift arrived, cell 12 in solitary was empty. The steel door was still locked. The lights were on, and Shaw was gone. At first, no one believed it. The warden thought it was a clerical error, a missing count, a mislogged transfer. But the logs were clean. The cameras showed nothing. From midnight to dawn, the footage played without interruption. Every 60 seconds, a guard had passed by that same cell door. Elias was seen sleeping at 2 a.m. By 3 o'clock, his bunk was empty. The panic began quietly, then spread like fire. Alarms screamed. Searchlights swept the yard. Every inch of the prison was searched. Ventilation shafts, laundry tunnels, boiler rooms. Nothing. No broken locks, no cut wires, no footprints. Just an empty bed and a single item left behind. A folded napkin with 4 words written in black ink. Check the man who counts. Detective Rachel Voss was called in from the state's Special Crimes Division. A former military investigator turned federal liaison, she was known for her sharp intuition and refusal to trust appearances. She arrived at Graybridge before noon, her coat still damp from rain. "Show me the cameras," she said. As the footage played, her eyes narrowed. "Freeze it," she ordered, pointing at the timestamp. 2:31 a.m. The hallway lights flickered for a single second, barely noticeable but enough. The camera rebooted, and the digital clock skipped ahead exactly 1 minute. "That's not a power surge," she murmured. "That's someone overriding the feed." When she asked for the maintenance records, she found something even stranger. The technician responsible for the cameras that week, Officer Paul Ridley, had called in sick 3 nights before the escape. His replacement, however, had never officially been hired. The ID badge scanned at the gate belonged to a man who didn't exist in any employee file. A phantom worker, a ghost guard. By evening, the warden's office was under federal lockdown. Every staff member was interrogated. Rumors started spreading among inmates. Some said they'd heard tapping sounds from the walls days before. Others claimed they saw Shaw speaking to guards through the food slot, offering advice about security blind spots. But when Voss examined the cell itself, she noticed something no one else did. Behind the metal sink, there was a thin layer of concrete that didn't match the wall. When she tapped it, the echo was hollow. She ordered it opened. Inside was a small cavity lined with plastic and insulation, barely large enough to hold a person. But it wasn't a tunnel. It was a cache. Inside were blueprints of the prison layout, staff rotation schedules, and dozens of printed ID badges, each one authentic, each belonging to a different officer. And among them, one stood out, Paul Ridley, the technician who'd never shown up. Voss held the badge under the light. The holographic laminate shimmered faintly, but under magnification. She saw something invisible to the naked eye, a microprint message, etched along the bottom edge. It read, "Freedom was never outside." The warden's voice trembled. "What does that mean?" Voss didn't answer. She stared back at the security footage one last time, eyes fixed on the reflection of the cell's tiny mirror. The timestamp matched 2:59 a.m. The camera showed the empty bed. Yet, in the mirror's reflection, there was movement. A figure still sitting on the edge of the bunk. She froze the frame. Elias Shaw was still there. But when the reflection looked up, He smiled directly into the camera. The footage became an obsession. Detectives, analysts, and tech specialists from 3 agencies pored over every frame, but the mystery only deepened. Elias Shaw, the man who vanished from a sealed cell, had somehow managed to appear in reflection after he was already gone. Detective Rachel Voss hadn't slept in 2 days. The entire case was starting to feel like a psychological maze, one Shaw had designed long before he disappeared. "He's not outside," she muttered, staring at the reflection again. "He's still here, somewhere in this system." Graybridge Correctional Facility shut down all external communications. The FBI Cyber Division was called in after strange signals began pinging from the prison's internal servers. Someone or something was remotely accessing the surveillance mainframe. Every night at 3:17 a.m., the exact minute of Shaw's disappearance, the same encrypted code tried to log in. And that's when Voss realized something chilling. The code matched a unique encryption pattern used in Shaw's fraudulent networks years before. It wasn't a coincidence. It was him. The investigation turned inward. Guards were questioned again, and Voss started noticing inconsistencies in their stories. Officer Daniels, a 15-year veteran, claimed he saw nothing unusual that night. Yet his shift log showed a 5-minute break he never reported. Another officer, Carter, was found to have wiped portions of the digital archive without permission. When confronted, he panicked and said, "He told me to. He said they'd never find him if I did." "Who told you?" Voss asked, her voice like steel. Carter's eyes were wild. "Shaw. He called me on the radio that night. I heard his voice. He said he was watching me." The warden dismissed it as paranoia, but Voss didn't. She checked the prison's communication logs. No record of the call. Yet, using the frequency analyzer, she found a brief, encrypted signal bouncing between internal radios at 3:19 a.m. It wasn't an outside hack. It came from inside the walls. By the 3rd day, the investigation took a darker turn. Maintenance crews reported hearing faint tapping from the ventilation system, following a pattern: 3 knocks, a pause, 2 knocks, repeated. A Morse code analyst translated it. Find the red door. There was no red door anywhere in the prison, at least not officially. But buried in the original architectural plans, Rachel discovered a sealed maintenance corridor, bricked up after a fire decades earlier. When the wall was finally broken open, dust and darkness spilled out. The smell of rust and old insulation filled the air. Inside, the corridor stretched for nearly 50 feet before ending in a locked, rusted steel door. And yes, it was painted red. Voss's flashlight beam wavered across the metal. Scratched into the paint were 5 words: "Not every prisoner leaves." Her partner, Agent Cole, tried forcing it open. The hinges screamed as the door cracked. Inside was a narrow chamber filled with old control panels and monitors, outdated prison security equipment from the 1980s. But one monitor was still on, faintly glowing blue. It showed live footage of the prison hallways, angles that didn't exist in any of the current security layouts. Cameras from blind spots, hidden corners, even inside guard offices. Someone had built a second surveillance network. And then the monitor flickered. Static hissed, and Shaw's face appeared on the screen. Calm, smiling. The same expression as in the reflection. "Detective Voss," he said softly, as if he knew she was there. "You finally found the door. I was wondering how long it would take." Cole stepped back, stunned. "Is this a recording?" Voss shook her head. "No, this feed is live." Shaw leaned closer to the camera. "You're not here to find me," he said. "You're here to understand why I left." Then the screen went black. The lights in the chamber cut out. Somewhere in the prison above them, sirens began to scream. When power was restored, every computer in the control room rebooted to a single screen filled with text. Line after line of code scrolled across in blue, spelling out a message. "The system holds more prisoners than the cells ever could." As Voss read aloud, she felt it, the weight of something bigger, deeper than a single man's escape. Elias Shaw hadn't broken out to flee the system. He'd broken out to expose it. But before she could connect the dots, Cole's voice echoed from behind her. "Rachel, you need to see this." She turned. On the back wall of the hidden room, under the dim emergency light, was a bulletin board filled with photographs, guard rosters, prison administrators, state officials. And in the center, connected by red string, was her own photo. Pinned beneath it were 3 words written in the same sharp handwriting as before. "You're next out." The air in the hidden chamber was heavy with dust and fear. Detective Rachel Voss stood frozen, staring at her own face pinned to the wall. Her partner, Agent Cole, whispered, This is impossible." But Rachel knew what it meant. Shaw's escape wasn't about freedom. It was personal. He was watching the watchers, and now she was part of his plan. Security teams flooded the prison. The warden demanded answers, shouting orders through trembling hands. Yet no one could explain how a man with no access to the outside world had orchestrated a digital labyrinth right under their noses. The FBI took over, seizing every server, every radio frequency, every data drive. Still, the deeper they dug, the more they realized Shaw had planned everything years in advance. The red door chamber wasn't just a hideout. It was a nerve center. Inside, analysts found encrypted files labeled Project Cleanline. Once decrypted, the files revealed confidential records, cover-ups, illegal transfers, and inmate experiments involving solitary confinement and psychological manipulation. Shaw had stumbled upon this while serving his time. What started as survival became an obsession with exposing the truth. Rachel pieced it together. Shaw wasn't running from the system. He was dismantling it from within. But that night, something went wrong. At 11:43 p.m., the power grid across the entire Graybridge facility went down again. Backup generators failed one by one, as if triggered remotely. Within minutes, every door in the West Block opened simultaneously. Panic exploded. Guards scrambled, alarms blared, and prisoners shouted through the darkness. But not one inmate left their cells. They stood silent, staring up at the surveillance cameras. Rachel raced through the corridors with Cole, flashlights cutting through smoke and confusion. "He's controlling everything," Cole shouted. "He's in the system." Rachel's earpiece crackled. Then a calm voice, low, deliberate, came through the channel. "Detective Voss, you're late." It was Shaw. The voice guided her through the hallways, turning left, then right, always just ahead of chaos. He seemed to know every move she made. Finally, she reached the old administrative wing, sealed off since the 90s. At the end of the hall was a glass observation room, lights flickering. Inside, on a dusty table, sat an old landline phone ringing. Rachel lifted it. "Where are you, Shaw?" she demanded. "I've been here the whole time," he replied. "You just couldn't see me." On the monitor before her, live feeds from the entire prison flickered. Shaw's reflection appeared on every single one, watching her from every angle. "You think you understand justice?" he continued. "You work for a system that buries its own sins. I didn't escape from prison. Detective, I escaped from what they built inside it." "Why me?" she asked. "Because you still believe in the truth," Shaw said. "You're the only one who might survive it." Then the phone line went dead. A sharp electronic hum filled the room. The monitors blinked out, replaced by a single video feed, live footage of Black Van speeding through a nearby service tunnel under the prison, its headlights cut through the dark. And sitting in the driver's seat, clearly visible, was Shaw. Rachel and Cole sprinted for the underground tunnel, the roar of backup teams echoing behind them. When they arrived, the van was gone. The tunnel ended abruptly in a collapsed wall. But lying in the debris was a USB drive taped to a manila folder, written across it in bold red letters, "Upload before they do." Back at headquarters, the data revealed hundreds of classified documents, evidence of secret funding, prisoner abuse, falsified deaths, and political bribes connected to Graybridge and dozens of other facilities across the country. Shaw had exposed a national conspiracy. 3 days later, Rachel received a single email from an untraceable source. No subject, no text, just a short video attachment. She clicked play. It showed traffic footage from a small town 2 states away. A man in a gray hoodie walked calmly into a diner, ordered coffee, and smiled at the waitress. When he looked up at the security camera, Rachel froze. It was Elias Shaw. He raised his cup as if toasting the camera. Then the video cut to black, replaced by text. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed. Rachel leaned back in her chair, heart pounding. She realized Shaw hadn't vanished. He'd become invisible in a different way. He wasn't hiding from the system. He was living inside it. And as the final second of the video ended, a new window opened automatically on her screen, a live feed of her own office camera. Below it, one final message appeared. "You're next out." Then, the screen went dark. If you think the story was intense, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it.